The rain was falling softly that morning, tapping against the windows of my little house in Asheville, North Carolina. I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of tea gone cold in my hands, staring at the empty chair across from me. It had been Charles's chair for 40 years. Now, it just sat there, silent, like a ghost of our life together. I'm Ellen Foster, but everyone calls me Ellie. I'm 65, a retired elementary school teacher, and I never thought I'd be a widow. But here I was, 1 week after Charles's sudden stroke, trying to piece together a world that felt broken. I wasn't ready for what came next. Nobody would be. It was a Tuesday when the phone rang, pulling me out of my fog. It was Ruth Larson, Charles's lawyer. Her voice was gentle but firm, asking me to come to her office downtown. There's something important we need to discuss. Ellie, she said. I didn't think much of it at first, just paperwork. I figured, the kind of thing you deal with when someone you love is gone. But when I walked into Ruth's office, the air felt different, heavy, like it was holding a secret. Ellie, Ruth began, sliding a folder across her desk. Charles left a will, a very specific one. I nodded, expecting the usual, our savings, the house, maybe some old family heirlooms. But then she said something that made my heart stop. He left you Silver Pines estate. It's a property worth $8 million. I blinked, my hands trembling in my lap. $8 million? Charles and I had lived simply, our little house, our quiet dinners, our Sunday walks in the Blue Ridge Mountains. We weren't rich, not by any stretch. I laughed, a nervous sound, thinking it was a mistake. Ruth, that can't be right. Charles would have told me, but Ruth's eyes were steady. He bought it 10 years ago. Ellie, paid it off in full. It's yours now. She handed me a key and an address, and I felt like the ground was slipping beneath me. A mansion? My Charles, who wore the same flannel shirt until it frayed at the cuffs, had bought a mansion? That afternoon, I drove out to Silver Pines estate, my old station wagon rattling along the winding roads. When I arrived, I couldn't believe my eyes. A long driveway lined with towering pines led to a grand, 3-story house with ivy climbing its walls. It looked like something out of a storybook. Not my life. I walked through the front door, my footsteps echoing on the marble floor. And that's when I found it, a letter, tucked inside a drawer in the study, written in Charles's familiar scrawl. Dear Ellie, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry I didn't get to share this with you sooner. I bought Silver Pines for us, for our 40th anniversary. I wanted you to have a place where you could feel free, where you could live without worry. I kept it a secret because I wanted to surprise you, to see your face light up. I love you, always, yours, Charles. I sank into a chair, the letter trembling in my hands. Tears blurred the words. 40 years together, and he'd been planning this? For me? It was beautiful, but it hurt, too. Why hadn't he told me? Why had he carried this alone? I felt a mix of love and betrayal, like I'd lost him all over again. As I drove back home, the weight of the secret settled over me. $8 million, a mansion. It was too much to process. And deep down, I knew I couldn't tell anyone, not yet. Not even my daughter, Laura. Something told me to keep this close, to protect it. Maybe it was the way Laura had changed since she got married. Or maybe it was just my grief talking. But I felt it in my bones. This was my secret to keep. At least for now. I went to bed that night, the letter folded under my pillow, and I whispered to Charles, wherever he was, you always knew how to surprise me, didn't you? But as I closed my eyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that this gift, this incredible, impossible gift, was about to change everything. And not in the way I hoped. A few weeks after finding Charles's letter, I was still reeling. Silver Pines estate felt like a dream I hadn't woken up from. A secret too big to carry. I'd visit the mansion in secret, walking its quiet halls, imagining what Charles had planned for us there. But back in my little house in Asheville, life went on as it always had, simple, unassuming, just me and my memories. I wasn't ready to tell anyone about the estate. Not yet, especially not my daughter, Laura. Laura's my only child, 35 years old, with a sharp mind and a creative streak that made her a brilliant interior designer. She used to call me every Sunday, laughing about her latest project or some silly thing Charles had said. But ever since she married Robert 2 years ago, something shifted. Her calls grew shorter, her visits rarer, and Robert, well, let's just say he wasn't what I'd hoped for in a son-in-law. It was a crisp fall afternoon when Laura and Robert came by the house. I'd baked a batch of oatmeal cookies, hoping to recapture those old Sunday moments with Laura. She hugged me tightly, her perfume sharp and expensive, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Robert, in his pressed slacks and polished shoes, shook my hand with that salesman-like grip of his. He worked at a bank downtown, always talking about investments and opportunities, like life was one big transaction. We sat in the living room, the same one where Laura used to build blanket forts as a kid. I poured tea, trying to keep things light, but Robert's eyes kept darting around, like he was sizing up the place. "Ellie," he said, leaning forward, "this house is awfully big for just you now. Don't you think? Have you considered selling it? You could downsize, free up some cash." His voice was smooth, too smooth, like he'd rehearsed it. I forced a smile, stirring my tea. "Oh, I'm fine here, Robert. This place is home." But his words lingered, sharp as a splinter. Laura chimed in, her voice hesitant. "He's got a point, Mom. It's a lot to maintain. And, you know, with Dad gone." She trailed off, looking at her hands. I saw the grief in her eyes. But there was something else, too, something I couldn't quite name. That's when I remembered a moment from Charles's funeral. I'd been standing by the coffin, numb, when I overheard Robert talking to a friend in the corner. Charles must have left something behind, he'd said, his voice low. "Laura deserves her share, you know? The old lady's not getting any younger." The words had stung, but I'd pushed them aside, chalking it up to grief and bad timing. Now, sitting across from him, I wasn't so sure. "Any plans for the future, Ellie?" Robert asked, sipping his tea. "I mean, financially. Charles must have left you something to work with." His eyes locked on mine, searching, and I felt a chill. Did he know something, or was he just fishing? Either way, I wasn't ready to tell him about Silver Pines. Not Laura, either, not when she seemed so under his spell. "Oh, we got by," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Charles always took care of things. I'll manage." Robert nodded, but I could tell he wasn't satisfied. Laura just sat there, quiet, like she was waiting for me to say more. I changed the subject, asking about her latest design project. But the air felt heavy, like we were all playing parts in a script we didn't understand. After they left, I locked the door and leaned against it, my heart racing. I didn't want to believe Laura would let Robert push her into something shady. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was after more than just small talk. That night, I made a decision. Silver Pines would stay my secret, at least until I could trust them again. The next day, I called a property management company and hired a caretaker for the estate. A kind man named Philip Stone. He was older, with a gentle voice and a knack for fixing things, and he promised to keep an eye on Silver Pines without asking too many questions. I told him I wasn't ready to move in yet, but I needed the place looked after. "It's a beautiful home, Mrs. Foster," he said. "Must mean a lot to you." I nodded, but I didn't tell him the half of it. From then on, I lived two lives. By day, I was Ellie, the retired teacher in her modest Asheville home, tending to my garden and waving to neighbors. But in my heart, I was the secret owner of Silver Pines, a place that held Charles's last gift to me. I'd drive out there some evenings, just to sit in the study and read his letter again, feeling him close. It was my sanctuary, my shield against the world. But secrets have a way of weighing on you. Every time Laura called, I wondered if she'd ask about money. Every time Robert smiled, I saw that calculating look in his eyes. I wanted to believe in my daughter, to trust that she was still the girl who'd climb into my lap and tell me her dreams. But something told me to hold tight to Silver Pines, to protect it like Charles had protected me. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Something was coming, something that would test me in ways I wasn't ready for. The days started blending together after Laura and Robert's visit, each one heavier than the last. I'd wake up in my little Asheville house, go through the motions, watering the roses, chatting with neighbors, but my mind was always on Silver Pines. That mansion, Charles's secret gift, was like a second heart beating inside me, one I couldn't share with anyone. Not yet. Not when Robert's questions kept echoing in my head. His voice smooth but sharp. Like a knife wrapped in silk. I tried to push it aside. To tell myself I was just being paranoid. After all, Laura was my daughter. She wouldn't let Robert pull her into something shady. Would she? But the doubt was there. Gnawing at me. And it only grew stronger as the weeks passed. It started with little things. Robert would call, asking how I was holding up, or if I'd thought about my finances. His tone was always polite. But it felt like he was circling, waiting for me to slip up. One afternoon, Laura came by alone, her eyes tired, like she hadn't been sleeping. "Mom," she said, sitting at my kitchen table. "Robert thinks we should help you manage things. You know, the house, the bills, whatever Dad left you." She looked at me, waiting for a reaction, but I just smiled and changed the subject. I didn't trust myself to say anything without giving away the secret of Silver Pines. Then things got stranger. One evening, I was tidying up when I noticed a drawer in my desk slightly ajar. I kept Charles's old papers there, bills, tax records, nothing special, but some of the folders looked out of place, like someone had rifled through them. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination running wild. But the next day, Philip Stone, the caretaker I'd hired for Silver Pines, called me with news that made my stomach drop. "Mrs. Foster," he said, his voice steady but concerned. "I saw a man lingering around the estate yesterday. He was taking pictures, asking neighbors who owned the place. I didn't get a good look. But he drove a black sedan, like the one your son-in-law has." Philip paused, letting the words sink in. "I thought you should know." My heart pounded. Robert? At Silver Pines? How could he even know about it? I thanked Philip, trying to keep my voice calm, and promised to look into it. But as soon as I hung up, I felt the walls closing in. I drove out to the estate that night, my hands gripping the steering wheel. The pines loomed tall in the moonlight, and the mansion stood quiet. But when I checked the back entrance, I found something that stopped me cold. A window latch was bent, like someone had tried to pry it open, and there were fresh footprints in the mud near the fence. I stood there, staring at those prints, my breath shallow. Was Robert really trying to break in? Or was I letting fear get the better of me? I didn't know what to think. But one thing was clear, Silver Pines wasn't just a gift anymore. It was a target, and I had to protect it. The next morning, I went back to the estate, needing to feel close to Charles, to understand why he'd kept this from me. In the study, I found something I hadn't noticed before, an old leather-bound journal tucked behind a shelf. It was Charles's, filled with his neat handwriting. I sat down, my hands trembling, and started reading, page after page. He wrote about his life, our quiet evenings, our dreams for Laura. But then I found an entry from 10 years ago, and my breath caught. "I bought Silver Pines today," he wrote. "It's for Ellie and Laura. A place where they'll always be safe." I didn't tell Ellie because I want it to be a surprise, but also because I worry. Money changes people. I've seen it happen. I want to make sure this gift brings them joy, not trouble. I closed the journal, tears stinging my eyes. Charles had known. He'd known how money could twist things, how it could bring out the worst in people. Was that why he'd kept it a secret? Was he trying to protect me from something, or someone? I thought of Robert, his probing questions, his slick smile, and Laura, my sweet Laura, caught up in his world. I wanted to tell her about Silver Pines, to share this piece of her father with her. But every time I pictured her face, I saw Robert standing behind her, waiting. I called Philip and asked him to tighten security at the estate, new locks, maybe a camera or two. "Don't worry, Mrs. Foster," he said. "I'll keep an eye out." His voice was reassuring, like a lifeline in a storm. But as I hung up, I felt more alone than ever. I was carrying this secret, this enormous piece of Charles's love, and it was starting to feel like a burden. That night, I sat in my kitchen, the journal open in front of me. I traced Charles's words with my finger, wishing he were here to tell me what to do. "You always knew how to handle things," I whispered, "but I'm not sure I can do this alone." The house was quiet, the rain tapping against the windows again, and I felt like I was standing at the edge of something dangerous. Robert was getting closer. I could sense it, and if he found out about Silver Pines, what would he do? What would it mean for Laura, for us? I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. I wasn't ready to let go of Silver Pines. It was more than a mansion. It was Charles's last promise to me, and I'd protect it with everything I had, even if it meant keeping it from the people I loved most. The weeks after finding those footprints at Silver Pines felt like walking on a tightrope. Every creak in my little Asheville house made me jump. Every phone call set my nerves on edge. I kept Charles's journal close, reading his words over and over, trying to draw strength from them. Money changes people, he'd written. I hadn't understood it then. But now, with Robert's shadow looming larger, I was starting to see what he meant. It all came to a head one chilly November evening. Laura called, her voice bright but strained, inviting me to dinner at their place across town. Just the three of us. "Mom," she said, "it'll be nice to catch up." I wanted to believe her, to think it was just a daughter wanting to spend time with her mother. But something in her tone, a hesitation, made my stomach twist. I agreed to come, but I went with my guard up. Charles's letter tucked in my purse like a talisman. Their house was modern, all sharp angles and glass. The kind of place Laura loved to decorate but felt cold to me. When I arrived, Laura greeted me with a hug, her smile tight, like she was trying too hard. Robert was waiting in the dining room, a glass of wine in his hand, his smile as polished as ever. "Ellie, so good to see you," he said, pulling out a chair. I sat down, my hands clasped in my lap, feeling like I was walking into a trap. Dinner started innocently enough, small talk about Laura's latest design project. The weather, the holidays coming up, but I could feel the tension building, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Robert kept refilling his wine glass, his eyes flicking to Laura, then to me. Finally, as Laura cleared the plates, he leaned back in his chair, his voice smooth but pointed. "Ellie, we've been thinking about you, about your future. You're all alone in that big house now. And at your age, well, it's a lot to manage, isn't it?" I froze, my fork hovering over my dessert. "I'm managing just fine, Robert," I said, keeping my tone even. But he didn't stop. "Come on, Ellie, Charles must have left you something, savings, investments, maybe property? You don't need to carry that burden alone. Laura and I could help. You know, take some of the weight off." Laura was back at the table now, her eyes fixed on her plate. She didn't say anything, but I could see her hands trembling slightly. My heart sank. This wasn't just Robert talking. This was planned. "What are you getting at, Robert?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He leaned forward, his smile fading. "Let's be honest, Ellie, you're not getting any younger. Managing a big estate, if there is one, takes energy, focus. Laura's your daughter, she deserves to know what's going on. Don't you think? We could manage it together. Make sure it's handled right." His words were cloaked in concern, but I saw through them. He wasn't worried about me. He was fishing for Silver Pines. I set my fork down, my hands steady now. If there was anything to manage, Robert, I'd handle it myself. I've been taking care of myself for a long time. My eyes locked on his, and for a moment, I saw something flicker in his expression, frustration, maybe even anger. Laura finally spoke, her voice small. "Mom, we just want to help. You don't have to do this alone." I looked at her, my heart breaking. Did she really believe that? Or was she just parroting Robert's words? I wanted to reach across the table, take her hands, and tell her everything, about Silver Pines, about Charles's letter, about the love that had built that place. But with Robert sitting there, his eyes boring into me, I couldn't, not yet. The conversation ended awkwardly, and I left soon after, my mind racing. That night, I couldn't sleep. Robert's words kept replaying, and the image of those footprints at Silver Pines haunted me. I knew I couldn't keep dodging him forever. If he was bold enough to push like that, what else was he capable of? I needed help, someone I could trust. The next morning, I made 2 calls. The first was to Alice Turner, a lawyer recommended by a friend from my teaching days. She was sharp, no nonsense, with a warm voice that put me at ease. I told her about Silver Pines, about Robert's probing, and about the footprints. "Ellie," she said, "we need to protect that estate. I'll start by securing the paperwork and making sure your ownership is airtight. But we should dig into Robert. 2. If he's after something, we need to know why. The second call was to Henry Blake, a private investigator Alice recommended. Henry was a retired cop. Gruff but kind, with a knack for finding things people wanted hidden. Give me a week, he said. If Robert's up to something, I'll find it. I felt a spark of hope. Like I wasn't alone in this anymore. But it didn't erase the fear. Henry didn't take long. 3 days later, he called with news that made my blood run cold. Ellie, your son-in-law's got a past. He was fired from a bank in Charlotte 5 years ago for skimming client accounts. They didn't press charges, but it's a red flag. He's not clean. I sat there, gripping the phone, my mind spinning. Robert wasn't just greedy, he was dangerous. Things came to a head a week later. Robert showed up at my house unannounced. Laura trailing behind him, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. He didn't waste time. Ellie, we know about the estate, he said, his voice low, almost threatening. Silver Pines, $8 million. You can't keep that kind of thing a secret forever. And frankly, at your age, you're not equipped to handle it. Laura deserves a say, and I'm going to make sure she gets it, even if it means taking this to court. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Laura wouldn't meet my eyes. Her face pale. I stood up, my voice shaking but firm. Robert, you don't scare me. If you think you can bully me into giving up what's mine, you're wrong. I'll fight you every step of the way. He smirked, like he'd expected that. We'll see, Ellie, we'll see. As they left, Laura glanced back, her eyes full of something, guilt. Maybe, or fear. I closed the door, my hands trembling, and leaned against it. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was a war, and I wasn't going to lose. Not to Robert, not to anyone. I called Alice that night, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. They're coming for Silver Pines, I said, and they're not going to stop. Alice's response was calm, resolute. Then we'll be ready, Ellie, we'll be ready. Robert's threat to take me to court hung over me like a dark cloud. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop picturing his smug face. His words cutting deeper than I wanted to admit. We know about Silver Pines, he'd said. How had he found out? And Laura, my Laura, standing there, silent, letting him speak for her. It felt like a betrayal, sharper than anything I'd felt since Charles died. But I wasn't going to let Robert win. Silver Pines was more than a mansion. It was Charles's love, his promise, and I'd fight to my last breath to protect it. Alice Turner, my lawyer, became my anchor. We met at her office the day after Robert's visit, and I poured out everything, the dinner, the threat, the footprints at the estate. Alice listened, her eyes steady, her pen scratching notes. He's trying to intimidate you, Ellie, she said, but we're not going to let him. We'll build a case, make sure Silver Pines stays yours. And Henry's digging deeper into Robert's past. If there's dirt, he'll find it. Henry Blake, the private investigator, was already on the case. I pictured him, gruff and determined, chasing leads like a bloodhound. I clung to the hope that he'd find something, anything, to stop Robert in his tracks. But even with Alice and Henry on my side, I felt alone. Laura hadn't called since that night, and every time I thought of her, my heart ached. Was she really siding with Robert? Or was she caught in his web, too? A few days later, Henry called, his voice low and urgent. Ellie, you're not gonna believe this, he said. I gripped the phone, my pulse racing. Robert's dirtier than we thought. He didn't just get fired for skimming accounts. 5 years ago, he worked for a real estate firm that handled the sale of Silver Pines to Charles. He knew about the property before you did. My guess? He's been planning this for a long time, maybe even targeted Laura to get to it. I sat down hard, my mind reeling. Robert knew about Silver Pines? Before Charles died? The room spun as I processed it. All this time, I'd thought Robert was just greedy, sniffing around for a payout. But this was calculated. He'd married my daughter, wormed his way into our family, all to get his hands on an $8 million estate he'd known about for years. I felt sick, betrayed not just for myself but for Laura. Had he ever loved her? Or was she just a pawn in his game? I was still shaking when the doorbell rang that evening. I opened it to find Laura standing there, alone, her face pale and her eyes red from crying. Mom, she whispered, can we talk? My heart lurched. I wanted to pull her into my arms. But I held back. Unsure. I let her in, and we sat at the kitchen table. The same one where we'd shared so many moments over the years. She looked small, fragile, like the little girl who'd once clung to me during thunderstorms. "Mom, I found something," she said, her voice breaking. "Emails on Robert's laptop. He's been talking to some real estate guy. Someone who wants to buy Silver Pines. He's been planning to sell it, without telling me." She paused, tears spilling over. "I didn't know, Mom. I swear I didn't know about the estate until he told me. And I let him convince me you were hiding things. That you didn't trust me. I'm so sorry." I reached for her hand, my own eyes stinging. "Oh, Laura," I said, my voice soft. "I wanted to tell you. I did, but I saw how Robert was pushing you. And I was scared he'd take it all away." I told her about Silver Pines, about Charles's letter, about the love that had gone into that place. And then I told her about Henry's discovery, Robert's connection to the estate. His calculated plan. Laura's face crumpled, and she sobbed, her shoulders shaking. "I thought he loved me," she whispered. "How could I be so blind?" I held her then, like I hadn't in years. And for a moment, it was just us, mother and daughter, grieving together. But I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. Robert wasn't going to give up easily. Alice and I got to work. She gathered every document related to Silver Pines, deeds, titles, Charles's will, ensuring my ownership was ironclad. Henry dug up more bank records showing Robert's shady dealings. Even a witness from his old firm who confirmed he'd been obsessed with Silver Pines back when Charles bought it. "He's got no case, Ellie," Alice said, "but he's desperate. We need to be ready for anything." The showdown came a week later. In a sterile conference room at Alice's office. Robert sat across from us, his lawyer beside him, a slick man in an expensive suit. Robert's eyes were cold, his jaw tight. Laura wasn't there, she'd refused to come, saying she couldn't face him. I looked at Robert, my heart steady despite the storm inside me. "You're not getting Silver Pines," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Not now, not ever." His lawyer started to speak, spinning a story about my declining capacity and Laura's right to the estate. But Alice was ready. She slid a folder across the table, her voice cutting through the room. "Mr. Grayson, your client has a history of financial misconduct, including embezzlement at his previous job. More importantly, we have evidence he knew about Silver Pines before Mr. Foster's death and targeted his daughter to gain access to it. If you proceed with this case, we'll countersue for fraud." The room went silent. Robert's face paled, his lawyer stammering. Alice kept going, laying out the emails, the witness statements, the paper trail Henry had uncovered. I watched Robert's confidence crumble, his eyes darting to the door. "We're done here," he muttered, standing abruptly. His lawyer followed, and just like that, they were gone. I exhaled, my hands trembling in my lap. Alice squeezed my shoulder. "You did it, Ellie," she said. I nodded, but my thoughts were on Laura. She'd called me that morning, her voice quiet but resolute. "I'm filing for divorce, Mom," she'd said. "I can't stay with him after this." I'd wanted to cheer, to cry, to pull her close, but I knew it wasn't over, not for her, not for us. We had a long road ahead. But for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. The dust settled after that confrontation with Robert, but it didn't feel like a victory, not yet. I'd protected Silver Pines, kept Charles's gift safe, but my heart was still heavy. Laura was hurting, grappling with the betrayal of a man she thought she loved. And me? I was trying to find my way back to the woman I used to be. The one who believed in family, in trust, in love that didn't come with strings. But something had shifted inside me. I wasn't just Ellie, the grieving widow anymore. I was stronger, tougher, ready to claim the life Charles had wanted for me. I made a decision that spring. I sold the little house in Asheville and moved into Silver Pines estate. Walking through those grand doors felt like stepping into a new chapter. The mansion wasn't just a house, it was a promise. A piece of Charles that I could hold onto. I spent days wandering its halls, touching the oak banisters, imagining him choosing this place for us. It was overwhelming at first. All that space, but it started to feel like home. I didn't want Silver Pines to be just mine. Though, Charles had always believed in giving back. So I decided to honor him that way. I opened the estate to the community, starting art classes for local kids in the ballroom. Their laughter filled the house, chasing away the ghosts of the past year. I made friends, too, real ones, like Alice, my lawyer, who'd become more than just my advocate. We'd sit on the porch, sipping lemonade, talking about life, not just lawsuits. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone. Laura and I were still finding our way back to each other. She'd moved out of the house she shared with Robert, filing for divorce and starting over. She'd visit me at Silver Pines, and we'd talk, really talk, about Charles. About her dreams, about the mistakes we'd both made. It wasn't perfect. There were still silences, moments when I saw the hurt in her eyes. But we were trying. I kept a little distance. Not because I didn't love her, but because I'd learned something. I had to protect myself. 2. One evening, as I was unpacking boxes in the study, I found another letter from Charles, tucked inside an old book of poetry. His handwriting was like a warm hug. Ellie, he wrote, if you're reading this, you've found Silver Pines. I hope it's everything I dreamed it would be for you, a place to be free. To be you. Don't let the world dim your light. Live big, my love. I sat there, tears streaming down my face. But they weren't sad tears. They were grateful ones. Charles had seen something in me I'd forgotten: strength, courage, the ability to start again. That night, I sat on the porch of Silver Pines, watching the sun dip below the pines, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. I felt free. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of grief or fear. Silver Pines wasn't just a mansion, it was a second chance. A reminder that I could still write my own story. I thought of Laura, of the kids painting in the ballroom, of the life I was building. And I thought of Charles. His love woven into every brick of this place. I learned something through all this. Something I want to share. Life can throw you into storms, betrayal, loss, secrets that weigh you down. But you don't have to let them define you. Sometimes, the greatest gift isn't what you're given, but what you find inside yourself when you're tested. For me, it was strength. For you, it might be something else: hope, forgiveness, or the courage to start over. Whatever it is, hold on to it. Live big, like Charles wanted for me. Because even in the darkest moments, there's a light waiting to shine. The greatest treasures in life aren't the ones you can hold in your hands, but the ones you carry in your heart. When faced with betrayal or loss, it's your strength, your resilience, and your ability to choose your own path that define who you are. Protect what matters, but never be afraid to let go of what holds you back. Live fully, love deeply, and trust that you're stronger than you know.